last season, the Indiana Pacers surprised everyone by making it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. And in that series against the Boston Celtics, in Joe Mazzulla's own words, that same Joe Mazzulla that will just continuously process information in his head like he has a million equations going on and just trying to figure out this angle, that angle, this shot, that shot, measuring the percentage, all that stuff. That Indiana series was by far the toughest series, and we swept them. But it should have went 7. And if you remember, in that series alone, the Pacers were very competitive with the Boston Celtics. As a matter of fact, 3 of the games in that series were decided by 5 or fewer points. Just putting that into perspective, the Celtics alone and all of the rest of their playoff games they played against the Mavericks, the Cavaliers, the Heat, 0 of those games were decided by 5 or fewer points. And we're talking about the Boston Celtics here. We're talking about a team that is considered to even now win next season's NBA championship. This is by far the best team in basketball. So all I'm saying is, man, you got to give the Pacers credit where credit's due, but we all understand that the Pacers probably really shouldn't have made it as far as they did last season. We got lucky enough that teams had injuries, especially in the series against the Knicks, when pretty much most of their star players were hurt or banged up from injuries. They did get somewhat lucky making it that far. But to give them their own credit, in that series against the Celtics, when Tyrese Haliburton went down, they still had a pretty good competitive game. Now, looking at the new accusations that are out in the Eastern Conference now, it's not going to be easy, but this is really where we're going to see if the Pacers are really legit or not. Starting off really with this Pacers team, I believe that the Pacers had a great offseason. As we all know, Indiana Pacers, they're a very small market franchise, so they're not going to go out and sign, the best of the best players, because really nobody is really going to want to play there unless they get traded there. And for the Pacers, well, they made sure to keep this young core intact. This team is one of the youngest teams in basketball, and it's really good that they were able to still keep Pascal Siakam, who is still like the second best player on this team. Also re-signed Obi Toppin as well, which, was a questionable deal in my opinion, but he really has now found his home for this Indiana Pacers team, and I believe that he can be a great accusation for them long term. Not to mention, they re-signed Andrew Nembhard, who is a very great player. I believe that Nembhard is really the guy that is one of the key foundation pieces for them and their future success, because, well, in that series last year against the Boston Celtics, he averaged 21 points, 3.8 rebounds, and 7.8 assists per game. Furthermore, he shot 47.6% from the arc and 54% from the field. Remember, in that game 3, while he played very well, I believe in that game he had 32 points, and he was just really lighting up the Celtics, and especially doing that on the highest stage. This is the playoffs we're talking about here. This isn't the regular season where, you can kind of have those bad games here and there. The playoffs, every game counts, and that just shows you right there with the caliber of player he is. Not to mention Aaron Nesmith as well, who is another player who played very well, especially in that Knicks series. I believe he went 8 for 8 in one of those games, but he has shown as well his growth. But I believe that these two guys are really going to be key for the Pacers' success long term, and luckily enough for them, age is still on their side. But another player who the Pacers re-signed was TJ McConnell, and that man TJ McConnell, he is just something else. What can I say? He was just lighting up the Knicks in that series. He even had his moments as well against the Celtics as well. He was just playing his best basketball I believe he's played pretty much his entire career. What the Indiana Pacers did this offseason was a huge success, because they are betting on keeping their young core intact, and just really like how Philly did in a way, just trust the process. That's all you really can do in situations like this, especially with a market like Indiana. They are going to have to keep all of their players intact to really develop them, and just hope that they actually become something. But, that could also be a risk, because what if they don't develop into the players that we think they will become? There's always a risk in doing things like this, but I believe with their young core of guys, with Tyrese, with Aaron Nesmith, with Andrew Nembhard, Obi Toppin. You have so many young players. Let's not forget Benedict Mather, who is a player that in his rookie season showed a lot of promise. Last year, he got hurt, so his numbers kind of declined a little bit, but I believe that he is going to be a very, very good piece for this team, whether if he's starting or if he's coming off the bench. I'd say the biggest thing for him that he's going to have to work on is his defense. That kind of brings me to now another topic I want to discuss for this Indiana Pacers team, and that is their lackluster defense. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that their defense is absolutely atrocious, because it's not. They actually have some pretty solid defenders on this team. You have Miles Turner, Aaron Nesmith showed a lot of great promise on playing pretty great defense, and Andrew Nembhard as well showed a lot of great promise of being a player who can play both sides of the basketball court. But just last year, as a team in general, they finished with the 7th worst defensive rating in the NBA, and they allowed over 120 points per game, which is the 4th worst in the entire NBA. And as I said, Miles Turner, who is a pretty exceptional shot blocker throughout his NBA career, last season, regardless of that, the Pacers still allowed 58.4 points in the paint, which is tied with the Wizards. We're talking about the Wizards here. This is by far the worst team in the NBA, and they are not getting any better with their draft pick. I'm just sorry. But they were tied with the Wizards for the worst in the entire NBA. Now, look, I think they're going to have to sometime soon address this dilemma on their team of not having the best defense, because if you've seen it last year already, the Celtics were one of the best defensive teams in basketball. That's why as well they won the NBA championship. Now there's a trend coming back again of teams actually being great on defense. You saw what the Minnesota Timberwolves did last year to the Denver Nuggets. They just exhausted them defensively speaking, because they were just that good on that end of the basketball court. Now, a guy who I believe that the Pacers could have possibly got, I'm not a whole expert on salary cap and all of this, but I do, of course, know about the first, the second apron, and all the new CBA rules that are going on in the NBA. But a guy who would have been a really, really good piece for this Indiana Pacers team is Isaac Okoro, in my opinion, because he is a great defender overall, and that's what this team needs. They need perimeter defense. They need guys who are able to guard multiple positions, who are very versatile. Because look, this Pacers team, they're still so good, because they had the highest, I believe, offensive rating in NBA history last season. They're that good on offense where they can kind of really not have as good of a defense because their offense is just that high powered. However, that's not really going to be a key to winning long term. But as I said, they have shown glimpses still as a team of being very solid on defense. We saw what they were able to still do against the NBA champion, the Boston Celtics, last year. So they have a lot of promise, but it's really going to be on the young players and their development, if they decide to not trade or anything like that, to really work on this area of the basketball court. But look, man, overall, with Tyrese Halliburton leading the way for this Indiana Pacers team, and hopefully he's healthy, he has a great, strong, healthy season next year, alongside Siakam and their core players, this team, they still are a possible threat out in the Eastern Conference. And it really, as I said, it just depends on how much better their core players come back and get better, because they're taking the strategy of a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder in a way. I'm just betting on their young players and their young core, and just building them up. They're doing what any other team would do in situations like that, and it seems to be working right now. But now coming into this next season, the East is stronger. It's not going to be the same as it was, especially if teams are healthy. We're going to see what they can really do. But for them, I believe if they can at least make it a tough first round series against any of these teams, or possibly make it to the second round, that is a successful season for the Indiana Pacers, in my opinion. And we shall see what happens next season. But I hope you guys enjoy this video. NBA season coming up very soon. Let's see what happens. Have a great day. Peace.